Welcome to the City of Lebanon Plan Commission meeting, Monday, November 16th, 2020. Call the meeting to order. Roll call, Kelly.
Ashley Paddock. Here. John Lashley.
Here.
Kevin Krulik.
Here.
Keith Campbell.
Here.
Jeremy Lawler. Absent. Brian Tandy.
Here.
Dan Bayshore.
Here.
Lori Gross. Here. Ellie Mullen.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Everybody's had a chance to read them, right?
I make a motion, we approve the minutes as written.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
We have a second. Call the roll, please.
Ashley Paddock.
Yes.
John Lashley.
I was not here.
Oh, sorry. Kevin Krulik.
Yes, approved.
Keith Campbell.
Yes.
Brian Tandy.
Yes.
Dan Bayshore.
Wasn't here either.
Lori Gross.
Yes.
Ellie Mullen.
Yes.
Okay. Ben, you ready for the next order of 20-20-02?
All right, good evening, Plan Commission members. We'll start off tonight with Plan Commission Order 2020-02. This is an order of the Plan Commission that determined that a resolution that was passed by the Redevelopment Commission for the Waterford Single Family Economic Development Area conforms with the plan for development for the city. So this is a step similar to what we just did this last month. It's just a different project. The Plan Commission is part of the process to evaluate the creation of a TIF district and then TIF bonding associated with that project. And what we do tonight is we look at that plan that's proposed and just to ensure that it matches up with all the planning documents that are approved for the city, whether that's the comprehensive plan or any other document that's under the review of the Plan Commission. So the one tonight is for the Waterford development, which was in front of you guys a few months back towards the beginning of the year. Mr. Hankey's development's on the south side of town, about halfway between our southern exit and Whitestown. It's a major development project that has going to have significant utility and infrastructure costs associated with it. And this is actually, we're setting up a residential TIF district. This is a fairly new program that the state legislature created just about a year and a half ago that allows communities that are either pre-growth stage or just in very early growth stages to create residential TIF districts to create some incentives to create that additional residential growth. In this case, it's a significant development. So being able to leverage some of the TIF, the tax increment created by that development to offset some of the initial very significant infrastructure costs is going to be a huge benefit to that development. So in this case, this would just be the Plan Commission order, which Mr. Frizzell will read here in a second, would just confirm that this does conform with the plans for development for the city of Lebanon. It does. Our comprehensive plan for that area indicates the type of development that they're proposing. Not that we had proposed or intended for there to be a golf course community in that area when we were planning our last comprehensive plan, but we're definitely getting something that's a quality development to the city of Lebanon. So tonight, before you be this order, just confirming that it does meet those planning documents we have in place.
Okay. You want to read the
Yes.
motion, please?
As Ben indicated, the Plan Commission is the body charged with the duty to create a general plan for the city, and this order is confirming that the plan for the Waterford Single Family Economic Development Area complies with the city's plan. Order number 2020-02 is an order of the Lebanon Plan Commission determining that a declaratory resolution and economic development plan for the Waterford Single Family Economic Development Area approved and adopted by the Lebanon Redevelopment Commission conforms to the plan of development for the city of Lebanon and approving the declaratory resolution and economic development plan. On November 9th, 2020, the Redevelopment Commission approved an economic development plan for the Waterford Single Family Housing Economic Development Area and adopted a declaratory resolution declaring that area as an economic development area pursuant to Indiana law. Lebanon Plan Commission is the body charged with the duty of developing a general plan of development for the city. The Plan Commission has reviewed the declaratory resolution and the plan and determined that the declaratory resolution and a plan conform to the plan of development for the city and now desires to approve the declaratory resolution and the plan. Therefore, the declaratory resolution and plan in all respects are approved. This resolution hereby constitutes the written order of the Plan Commission approving the declaratory resolution and the plan pursuant to Indiana law. The Secretary of the Plan Commission is hereby directed to file a copy of the declaratory resolution and the plan with the minutes of this meeting.
Okay. We can now, any questions from any of you from the board? Okay, we'll open it up for a public hearing. Anyone that'd like to come and speak at the microphone, please come up there. If not, don't see anyone coming, so we'll close the public hearing. Okay, I'd entertain a motion to pass 2020-02. And you have anything else you want to say?
Nope.
Okay,
I make a motion that we pass Order 2020-02.
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. Would you call the roll, please?
Ashley Paddock,
Yes.
JohnLassley,
Yes.
Kevin Krulik,
Yes.
Keith Campbell,
Yes.
Yes.
Dan Bayshore,
Yes.
Lori Gross,
Yes.
Ally Mullen.
Okay. Now, the next business, docket number 2036, consideration of the initial zoning classification for voluntary annexation consisting of 51.794 acres for the M&I Riley LLC. The property is located generally at the dead end of Edwards Drive, south of the Lebanon Business Park, requesting zoning classification of PBI, Planned Business Industrial. Ben?
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Campbell. I'll walk through a little bit of the background here. For recollection here, the process for annexation, in this case is a 100% voluntary annexation. The petition was submitted by representatives of M&I Riley LLC. The process first requires the annexation to come to the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission is reviewing the annexation application to determine an appropriate zoning district for the property. In many cases, or in some cases, you may have a plan that's already in place for the property, and you'd be looking to follow the zoning classification associated with that proposed development, and ensuring that that proposed zoning meets all the recommendations from the comprehensive plan. In other cases, you may not have a specific development plan, and you can either do one of two things. One, just establish it as the kind of our base residential zoning district, which is the SF, single-family residential classification. Or in cases where there is some proposed use for the property, you may not have a specific plan, but some proposed use for a specific property owner, you can also consider any zoning classification we have as long as it conforms or generally conforms with the comprehensive plan. In this case, M&I Riley did file the annexation petition. They are filing it. They have it is under contract with Ken's Foods, which is, they pull the computer screen up. We'll show you where the site is located. This is the property outlined in yellow that's in question for the annexation. This building you see with the white roof is Ken's Foods, so it's directly adjacent south of Ken's Foods and adjacent to the existing city limits. Ken's Foods is purchasing this property. I have talked to them. They do not have any specific plans for the property. They're not right now planning an expansion that would develop this property. They are, however, buying this property to put it in their inventory. If and or when they may need to expand, they have this in their inventory to allow them to do that, some greater flexibility. So I don't know whether they would plan a building expansion, expanded area for truck parking. Those aren't things that they're necessarily considering at this time. They are just purchasing this property so they have in their inventory if and or when that's needed. So at this point, we don't know that they're going to need it or when. They are just in the process of purchasing to set that aside. So that's why we've got the request for the PBI, Planned Business Industrial Zoning Classification, as an extension of the existing Lebanon Business Park adjacent to Ken's Foods. In reviewing this with the comprehensive plan, when we just recently redid our comprehensive plan about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and looking at this quadrant of the community, that's kind of the southwest quadrant here, much of it we expect over time to develop as extensions of the business park, additional industrial development. But that comprehensive plan is intended to be kind of a 5 to 10 year time horizon. So what we anticipated when we did that plan is that if there is expansion, it will primarily happen adjacent to either State Road 39 or State Road 32, and you kind of got this area in the middle where we didn't expect that there would be near-term development. So we actually had proposed this to remain in an agricultural or low-density single-family classification in terms of future land use, but that was really because we didn't anticipate there being the possibility over the next 5 years that there would be additional industrial development, at least not a large-scale industrial development. In this case, this is a single property that's adjacent to an existing user in the business park. Again, we didn't anticipate something like this coming up. So while the future land use plan doesn't currently specify industrial development, we do expect that over time that this would become industrial development as an extension of the business park. So for this reason, Plan Commission or the planning staff recommends that the Plan Commission recommend the planned business industrial zoning classification of the Common Council. So again, just to go back to the process, the Plan Commission provides a recommendation of a zoning classification, and then that recommendation then goes to the Common Council, who will then consider both the annexation and the zoning as part of that annexation ordinance that will be coming up. So that's all I've got. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone on the board have questions for Ben? Not hearing any or seeing any. We'll open up the public hearing now. Anyone has anything they'd like to say, please come forward and give your name and address. And also, before you leave, make sure to sign the sheet over there.
Good evening, Kevin Riley, attorney with Riley, Teeter and Schreier, 250 Main Street, Suite 601 in Lafayette. We represent the petitioner, M&I Riley. I don't have anything to add. I just wanted to let you know that we are here and if available to answer any questions that you have.
Right, thank you. Anyone else like to speak on this issue? Feel free to come up and speak if you'd like. Okay, let me see any. Okay, I'll close the public hearing then, and then we will have Ben come back, and anyone else have questions on the board again? If not,
Ben, quick question, the property, I'm trying to think, is it to the south? I also noticed that they also, R.N. Riley also owned it, or is this like a holding company, like a real estate company, or?
I would let the applicant address that.
It's farmland, so the farmland is leased out or rented out.
Okay.
So
okay.
I would just also for the record, I know there are other people in the audience that are interested in this property or what happens with this property. So the annexation process, once it's complete, it'll be brought into the city, it'll be zoned, whatever the recommendation is provided here, and then adopted by the council. If and or when Ken's Foods decides to develop this property, it will come back through the Plan Commission for development plan approval. So when they have specific plans for this property, there will be additional notices sent out, and it will be before the Plan Commission. So there will be a time for those that live in this vicinity to be able to see specific plans if and or when that does come back.
Okay, thank you. I would entertain a motion for docket 20-36.
I make a motion, docket 20-36, to recommend planned business industrial PBI zoning classification to the Common Council for this territory, annexed territory.
Okay, you have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Brian?
Second that.
All right. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Ashley Patrick,
Yes.
John Lastly,
Yes.
Kevin Krulik,
yes.
Keith Campbell,
Yes.
Brian Tandy,
Yes.
Dan Bayshore, Lori Gross,
Yes.
Ally Mullen.
Okay. All passed. Thank you. Okay, the next item on the docket is 20-37. Autumn Trace of Lebanon requesting development plan approval for a proposed new assisted living facility. The property is located at 1810 North Lebanon Street and 1906 North Lebanon Street. The property is zoned PBC, Planned Business Commercial, and in the Thoroughfare Overlay District. Ben?
All right, this item is before you here tonight for development plan approval. This would be the last step in the planning approval process before they could pull building permits and start construction on this property. So this before you tonight, I'll kind of walk through the site, a little bit about the development itself, including what the building looks like and what the site looks like, and then I answer any questions you have. So this is, and I will clarify this again, I've been saying it wrong, it is an assisted living facility. That does not necessarily mean they provide medical care, but they do provide assistance to the residents, so if they need help with their food or whatever the case may be. So there was some question at the BZA meeting if this was just a senior living facility, like an age-targeted facility, or whether it was actually assisted, and they do provide assistance to the residents, just not full-blown medical assistance. So it is an assisted living facility. It is a two-story building. It contains 54 living units, and they do also have associated parking and common areas in the building. So they've pulled up here. This is the site. It's on North Lebanon Street. This is the Bill Estes Chevrolet dealership that's directly to the north. To the west and south, we do have single-family homes, so they were required to meet buffer standards. Adjacent to those properties where they didn't get a BZA variance. And then across the street, there are some additional single-family homes that you see here as well. So let me go, I'm going to pull up the site. I'll just go ahead and pull up the landscape plan because this kind of gives you the overall site. Now this essentially is the front half of the site adjacent to 11th Street. There's another probably 400 plus feet to the back before you get to the rear property line. About half of that area is used for their detention pond. The other will remain open. So the building itself is closer, the edge of the parking lot itself is about 500 feet from the rear property line. So there's a significant distance there to the rear property line. But this kind of gives you an overall look at the site. They're going to maintain one entrance off 11th Street. The building itself sits in a U shape right here in the middle of the property. There is a kind of a common courtyard in the back for residents, but that is in a U shape. Out front, you have all the visitor parking associated with the building, and then employee parking to the back. They did go before the Board of Zoning Appeals at their meeting earlier this month. And because this is kind of a long and narrow site and they needed to maintain 360-degree access around the building for the fire department, and couple that with the fact that there also are utilities and easements that run along the south property line, and they are maintaining open swales for stormwater on both of those areas. There's a limited amount of space to be able to do the parking lot perimeter and buffer yard landscaping that are required on the south side, and then just the parking lot perimeter on the north side. So they did get a variance approval to get relief from that parking lot perimeter and buffer yard standards. On the south side of the property, they will, along the property line or just off the property line, be providing an 8-foot tall tan vinyl privacy fence. So they will be providing significant screening along that property line in the form of an 8-foot tall fence. They just didn't have room to also provide the landscaping in that area. So they did get that variance approved a couple weeks ago. To walk through a little bit here, I did provide all of the comments from the Technical Advisory Committee. They have responded to some of these, but there are some additional things that are outstanding, including stormwater approval. So they are working through the response to all of those comments. In terms of development standards, I provided a summary of all those in your packet. They do meet all of the applicable lot standards, setbacks, etc. on this site. In terms of parking, they are required for this type of facility to have 0.8 spaces per unit, and then also 1 space for employee, and that equates to 59 parking spaces, and they have provided the required 59 spaces. There are 56 standard spaces and 3 handicap. And then in the thoroughfare overlay district, we also require bike racks, so they have provided the associated bike racks around the facility as well. In terms of lighting, let me go get that for you. This isn't going to look like much because it's just a whole bunch of numbers on a plan, but I will pull it up just so you can see what it is that we require them. Their lighting contractors required to provide us a photometric plan. This is what you see here. And what they do is essentially they place the light standards on the property and then provide the measurements of light intensity around the property to the department. And they're required by the time you reach the property lines, particularly as it relates to the residential, which is to the south, to be down to 0.3 foot candles, which I just read recently. At 0.5, you can distinguish faces from somebody that's in your vicinity. So at 0.3, it's too dark to distinguish faces. So in this case, they have provided a lighting plan that meets all of the standards. Like I said, the one that was most critical was the one to the south because we did have residential uses there, and they have made sure to meet those standards along that property line so there wouldn't be a light spillage to the neighboring property. Landscaping, I'll just go back to that and kind of highlight a couple things for you. We've got parking lot perimeter and interior landscaping that's all been provided. In the thoroughfare overlay, you also have a buffer requirement along the thoroughfare, so they have provided all the required setbacks and plant materials along Lebanon Street. They do also meet the building-based landscaping requirement of the thoroughfare overlay district. You can see represented here, probably close to 80% of the perimeter of the building. So they more than meet the requirement for the building-based landscaping. In addition, one other thing to note, while the parking lot is about 500 feet from the rear property line, the property itself is adjacent to additional residential uses. So they are required to provide the buffer, both plantings and screening along this western perimeter of the parking lot. So what we have here is in combination, we'll have the same 8-foot tall vinyl fence that they provided on the southern property line across this back in combination with the required landscape plantings. They have put some of the plantings on the east side between the fence and the parking lot to provide some plant materials along the parking lot, and then also additional tree plantings along the west side of the fence just to provide some additional landscape screening that will be visible to the residents that are to the back of the property. So they have met all the buffer yard requirements here. They're providing a fence along the south property line, and they've met all the landscape standards elsewhere on the property. In terms of signage, they will be required to submit a specific signage plan when they go to get sign permits, but they have provided an example you see here on this landscape plan of what their sign will generally look like, and they do have a location out by the street that you see here where that sign will be located. So that sign, they'll need to submit the rendering of the plan along with dimensions to ensure that it does meet our ground sign standards of the UDO. And then if they have any additional building signage on the front of the building, that will have to meet all our wall signage requirements, and they'll have to submit those before they receive any sign permits. All right, we'll go to architecture, and I'll pull up take me just a second to scroll and find those once the full plans load up here. There it goes. There we go. Okay, let me find the correct elevations here before I call. Here we go. Okay, this gives you an idea of what the building's going to look like. The primary materials are brick, and then some additional siding materials as accent, and then some stone across the front. So what you see here on the bottom of the screen is the front elevation. It is a 2-story building. They got a prominent entrance. You see here right at the front that's got stone and brick. The exterior of the building on the sides, both the north and south, is all brick. And then the only place where you'll see any other siding material is on the inside of the U shape on the courtyard side. Otherwise, it's all brick or stone and a little bit of siding on the front. They have met all applicable architectural standards of the Unified Development Ordinance, including the overlay. So they're all good to go there. Just wanted to be able to show you what we've got here in terms of what the building construction will look like. Here also is one of the other side elevation. This is from the rear of the building. This is what will be seen from the rear. So as I mentioned, it does meet all applicable standards for architecture. So with that then, the staff recommendation, we find compliance with the UDO requirements for the subject site. We recommend approval of the subject development plan contingent on the following conditions. The first is on TAC comments, that the applicant adequately address any remaining City of Lebanon Technical Advisory Committee comments prior to application for any building permits or site improvements. And number 2, the signage plan. The applicant shall submit a signage plan indicating location and elevations of all proposed signs and receive sign permits before any sign installation. And that's all I've got, and be happy to answer any questions.
Ben, what's the measurement of the entrance?
The
Off
width
of
the entrance?
39, yeah. To me, it just looks real small. I mean, I'm sure it's code, but to me, it just looks a lot smaller than.
Like barely enough for 2 cars.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a minimum of 2 lanes wide. Of course, I just closed the file that I needed to see, and it's going to take
Is
another 10
that,
seconds.
I assume that's
to
something the state has agreed to? Did they have to go before
They
this?
still have to get their specific approval. So this site had 2 cuts, and they're essentially going from 2 to 1. So I don't expect that there will be any concerns from the state because they're actually eliminating one cut that was already there. But they will still have to get their NDOT approval for that cut. It's in a slightly different location than the two existing cuts, so they will have to go to the state.
Ben? The fence on the south property line, it goes it stop right where the drainage area starts, or does it go through that drainage area behind the rest of the properties that are still there?
So it'll extend basically along the improved area of the property. So if you see here, it essentially starts right around here at the corner,
Right.
and will extend back to about right here where the parking lot ends.
Okay, but then there'll be another fence on the west side, though.
And yes, and then another fence that follows along this west side of the back.
Okay.
Plant material be on the inside or outside of that fence?
On the western side, there was some on the inside and some on the outside. So there would be some along the parking lot, perimeter between the parking lot and the fence.
What
and
has what has the purpose been on the plant material being on the outside of the fence?
It's to meet the buffer requirements between this property and the residents behind to the west.
Even with the fence there?
Yes. Yeah, our buffer standards between a commercial use like this and residential requires a combination of fence and landscape materials.
I just know a lot of times, unfortunately, those trees and so forth don't get taken care of because they're outside the fence, and that makes no sense to me, but.
Well, they've got a whole probably acre field back there that they're going to have to maintain, so they have to be back there anyway. If it was just between a fence and a property line, I could see where there's some concern.
So there's how many, you said 500 feet?
There's 500 feet from the back of the parking lot to the property line.
That's drainage area.
Yeah, let me see. This kind of gives you a little bit of an idea here. So there's the back of the parking lot. It's about 500 feet there to the.
Yeah, that makes a big difference.
So about, like I said, about half of it it's mostly dry detention that would fill up on a heavy rain event. And then you've got a little bit of a field here that'll have to be maintained as well.
Place doesn't look that big.
Any other
That back
questions
is
for
their
Ben?
retention. That back in the retention, does that go where the soccer fields or whoever owns that on the
Yeah,
other
the
side?
soccer fields are kind of north and a little bit northwest of here.
Okay.
You got a little bit of floodplain associated with the creek that kind of cuts through this back corner of the property.
Okay.
And then all of this dry detention area starts outside of the floodplain. So it is not a wet detention area, it's dry.
Right.
So unless you get a heavy rain event, it's there to fill up if you get a heavy rain event, otherwise it'll be primarily dry.
Okay. Anyone else on the commission have questions? If not, we'll let the applicant come next. Say.
Hi, I'm Jason Yoder, Brownsburg, Indiana. I'm actually the general contractor and representative of Autumn Trace, and Jim Gillen's the owner of Autumn Trace. So Ben did a pretty good job of explaining everything, so if you have any questions, I can handle the construction and you can handle the business.
Any member of the commission have questions for either one of them? Go ahead.
What is the mix of the unit sizes? I see some are maybe studios, and there's some that actually have some bedrooms. What is the mix of that?
It's a good question. I'm not sure off the top of my head. Typically we have 20 studios, 20 one-bedrooms,
Well,
maybe a
right-
few more studios.
Right now, we have 32, what we call deluxe suites, indoor studios, and 20 one-bedrooms, and then two bedrooms apartments.
And will these all be, maybe this, I don't know if this is the right terminology, but market rate? Will they be subsidized in any manner?
No, we do, we build according to state licensure specs, but we do operate in the private pay market, which also includes the Veterans Administration funds, private pay insurance, long-term care insurance, but we are right now in the private pay market.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have a question?
I do have one more. This is directly to the north bin of the proposed car wash, right? How will these two coexist as far as what buffers need to be? I assume they're in place and to code.
Yeah, between the two uses, they're both commercial uses, so there's no buffer that's required between the two uses. About the only thing in terms of coexisting is they both share this detention area of dry detention to the back. So there will be underground storm sewer pipe that runs from the car wash along that southern property line back to this dry detention area. It's been sized appropriately to accommodate both developments.
Okay, good, thank you.
Anyone else? If
Could
not,
I say one more thing?
sure.
I would encourage, if you care to take a look, to go to autumntracecommunities.com, because we have other locations, and it can kind of give you an idea of the type of product that's going to go in here, which is going to be different than what is currently in Lebanon. So that's a website, and anyone needs to get a hold of me directly, someone can get you the contact information.
Okay. All right, thank you. And I'll open up the public hearing. Anyone like to speak? Bill, come up to the microphone. Don't see anything. I don't see anyone coming forward, so we'll close the public hearing. Okay. The next item, we need to have a motion to pass docket 2037.
I make a motion to approve the development plan on the following conditions for docket 2037, that all TAC comments, City of Lebanon Technical Advisory Committee be addressed, and that a signage plan is submitted for approval before any permits are issued.
Okay. We have a motion, we have a second.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk call the roll, please.
Haddock,
Yes.
John Lastly,
Yes.
Kevin Krulik,
Yes.
Keith Campbell,
Yes.
Brian Tandy,
Yes.
Dan Bayshore,
Yes.
Lori Gross,
Yes.
Ali Mullen.
Okay. Motion 20-37 is passed. Okay. Ben, we ready for the next docket number, 20-38? Woodland Airstream of Lebanon requesting development plan approval for proposed new RV sales and service business to be located at an estimated address of 953 Monument Drive and 953 Lastly Drive. The property is zone PBC, planned business commercial, and in the Interstate Overlay District. Ben?
Very good. This is another exciting project coming to Lebanon. We're getting an Airstream dealership here. They'll pull up the screen. I'll show you where the site's located. For those of you familiar with the south side of town, this is the Lebanon Fire Station right off the interstate. So it'll be the remaining property that's just west of the fire station that you see outlined here. So essentially between the fire station and the Subaru facility here to the west along the interstate. So this is the site. It's a little bit more than 3.5 acres, zoned appropriately for the use. They did come before the Board of Zoning Appeals back in June for a handful of variances. One was the number of parking spaces. They're required to have 31 and they have 29 based on site limitations, so they get that approved. The dumpster location, I'll pull up the site here in a little bit to show you what that means, but essentially what happened here is they have 2 road frontages, and our ordinance says that the dumpster can't be anywhere between the building and the street. So in this case, they had to either put the dumpster between the building and Lastly Drive or the building and the interstate, and we preferred it to be on the back side of the building towards Lastly Drive, so that's where it's located, but they did need to get a variance for that since it's technically between the building and the street. Parking lot landscaping, again, they had some requirements for interior landscaping. You'll see here in a second in the display area where they have trailers. It's really kind of challenging to put landscape islands when you're trying to negotiate trailers. But they have been able to provide 3,900 square feet where they were required to have 4,100. So they did have to technically get a variance, but they did provide most of the interior landscaping that they were required. And finally, the interstate overlay buffer plantings. This property has a significant sign easement. I think it's 80 feet. It's 80-foot sign easement along the interstate. So essentially, in order for them to be able to develop the site, they had to push the parking lot all the way up to that sign easement, which didn't provide them the ability to put all the buffer plantings along that frontage that were required. So they did end up providing all the plantings, but they put them elsewhere on the property, and I'll show that here in a second. But all those variances were approved back in June. So what we have here is the Woodland Airstream of Lebanon. They're going to construct a new dealership and service center on the property. That's approximately a 16,000 square foot building, and it does have Interstate 65 visibility within access via Lasley Drive. I did outline all of the TAC comments in the staff report. They are still working through some of those items, and they will be required to complete all those TAC revisions before they get any building permits. I did also provide a summary of the development standards and showing where they have met both the lot size, setbacks, etc. They do meet all those. And again, we talked about parking a little bit. I guess I should probably go ahead and pull up the site. Take a second for this to get loaded up again. This type of use is required to have one space per 500 square feet plus one space per 20 units displayed. So they did have 31 spaces required, and they provided the 29 and then got the BZA variance. Let's go ahead and go to find the landscape plan. We'll just use that one. Here we go. Okay, so as you can see, the storage display areas are to the north of the building, some along this eastern property line, and then a few along the interstate, and then all of their employee and customer parking areas is maintained here adjacent to the building and out in front of the building between that and the interstate. So they did provide those spaces there that you see, and the 29 that they were permitted by BZA variance. In terms of lighting, they have not currently submitted a lighting plan. They likely don't have the lighting contractor lined up yet, as is the case sometimes. So we did provide a requirement that they submit that lighting plan before they get any building permits so that we can confirm that they did meet all of the applicable lighting standards. In terms of landscaping and buffer yard, I talked a little bit about some of the variances. You can kind of see that depicted here on the south property line. This is a significant easement that you see along here, and there's also a pretty significant change in topography as you get to the site. So they did put landscaping along that southern area in the two corners where they could. They put significant amount of landscaping along the western property line, and then parking lot perimeter landscaping along Lasley Drive and along the eastern property. So where they did have space to put in landscaping to meet all of the numbers that were required, they did along the western property line to make up for areas where they could not provide it because of the easements that were significant in that area. Signage plan, they have shown us a rendering of the building that shows that there's a wall sign along the southern elevation adjacent to the interstate. They didn't provide dimensions of that sign, so we can't necessarily confirm that it does meet standards, but it does appear to meet the standards. And then we did just put a condition on their approval that they submit the appropriate renderings for all signs proposed for the site so that we can verify that they do meet all applicable development standards prior to receiving any sign permits and sign installation. Finally, architecture. Let me go back here. This gives you an idea what the building's going to look like. It's a combination of split-face concrete block, which is represented by the darker color, and then architectural metal panels that you see represented here, but kind of the tan/gray color. Does meet all standards of the UDO. This is the south elevation that you'll see from the interstate with the windows and primary entrance on the building, which is required of the Interstate Overlay District. On the east elevation that faces towards the parking lot, you can see where their service bays are located, et cetera, and they do have some additional service locations on the west elevation. So this gives you an idea what the building looks like. It does meet all applicable standards. So with that, staff finds the compliance with the Unified Development Ordinance requirements for the subject site, and we do recommend approval of the subject development plan contingent on the following conditions. One, that the applicant adequately address any remaining City of Lebanon Technical Advisory Committee comments prior to application for any building permits or site improvements. Number two, that the applicant shall submit a lighting and photometric plan that meets all applicable UDO standards prior to application for any building permits or site improvements. And finally, signage plan, that the applicant submit a signage plan indicating location and elevations of all proposed signs and receive sign permits before any sign installation. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from anybody on the commission? Okay. The applicant here to speak.
Hi, my name's Jeremy from Holloway Engineering. I just want to say that, we worked on this project and we appreciate your favorable recommendation. And actually, I think it's probably the best location for this site right there off of 65. So that's all I have. If you have any questions.
Okay, anyone have questions for the applicant? Okay,
Thank you.
I'll now open up the public hearing. Anyone like to speak? Not seeing anyone, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you. Now, we entertain a motion here to approve docket 20-38 or disapprove, either way.
I'll make a motion that we adopt docket number 20-38 with the clarifications of all of the TAC comments being taken care of.
I second.
That also include the lighting plan and the...
Yes,
Okay.
yes, sorry. Lighting, TAC,
Signage,
everything.
yeah, and the signage plan.
Yeah, and the signage.
Okay. We have a second? Do we have a second? Can the clerk call the roll, please?
Ashley Paddock,
Yes.
John Leslie,
Yes.
Kevin Krulik,
Yes.
Keith Campbell,
Yes.
Brian Tandy,
Yes.
Dan Bayshore,
Yes.
Lori Gross,
Yes.
Ellie Mullen.
December 24th.
Okay. Anything else, Ben? Okay. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, our next regular meeting of the Lebanon Plan Commission is scheduled for Monday, December 21st, and we will now adjourn. Thank you.